Hello, Vicky. How are you?
Michelle, you?
I am running fantastically.
Good. I love it. I love it.
So we're up
You've
to
got
our, thank you. We're up to interview 3 with you, our Vicky files. And this is the part where we're going to go through the teenager part. So this is from like 12 to 16 years of age. And this is all going to, we've got about, I've got about 7 layered questions, I'm going to call them, because each question tends to have a couple of questions or points in it. And I also know from our previous interviews that you always happen to fall into that next question.
so
So
good.
you're always ahead of the game, which I love. It's a great connection to have as well. So this is, working through that private school time. When you were 12 years old, there was an instance there where dad left and came back, and there was this constant moving, and just a little bit of talking about fourth form by correspondence as well. So, what we're going to go through is your school experience. And my first question for you is, can you describe your experience attending a private school?
Hmm. It was enlightening. I'll put it that way. Um, I think the only thing it did good for me was the name of the school in
Okay.
future employment, to be
Wow.
totally dead honest. Yeah, the education was very good. Yes, it was a private school. It was a private girls' school, which I don't think was also a very good thing.
Yeah.
Because I thought men were aliens. By the way, they still are. But anyway, actually, that really hasn't changed. But I mean, I think it wasn't a healthy. I just don't think it was very healthy. I didn't like the snobbery and all the things that occurred with when I was there. And that might not be the same experience for everyone. But my parents were wealthy then. They had very nice vehicles, fancy vehicles. Mum would pick me up, and everyone would go, oh. I used to ask her to pick me up around the corner when she came to collect me from school before I started taking the bus, because I said, this is embarrassing. I really hate this. Just I don't know. I didn't like it. It just wasn't my thing. And my brother also went to a private school, the boys' school down the road, he had the same experience. He didn't like it.
Wow.
He wished he'd been. So yeah, that's my
So,
experience.
how did it shape your academic or social life during your teenage years?
Um, I knew what to expect from people.
Okay.
If you had money or you had a name or you mentioned the name of the school, private school that you worked, people would see you in a different perspective,
Yep.
communicate with you in a different way, which was I didn't find, it was honest. That wasn't honest. People were not honest with you. They wanted to know you in case they thought there was something that they could gain from you.
Mm.
So that
Because it
was
was
so. I guess I look at it people with suspicion.
interesting. Interesting. That's where
Yeah.
it comes from as well, isn't it?
And, and
And,
and let me say, there was good too. I mean, the education was very good.
yeah.
But not to say, I mean, I went to a public state school, so I knew the difference where the education was very good there.
Yep.
So I didn't, yeah, so there wasn't, seemed to me that was the only difference I could really see
Yeah. That's
personally.
good though, because lots of people think it's going to be better for them if they send their kids to a private school, and even though it's years on now, there's probably a similar thing still going on today.
Well, not personally, it wasn't for me, but the only, as I said, the good thing, and that's why parents want to send their children to private schools or good name schools, because it does help you in the future with employment. If your resume says you went to this particular private school, it'll get you in the door.
Yeah.
It'll certainly get you an interview anyway. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I do
So
agree
there's a
with
big
you.
advantage. In the big world, there's a big advantage to it.
There's a tick. So
Mm.
where there hang on. Were there any particular subjects or activities at school that you were especially passionate about at that time?
I liked English, French. I was very good at French and I loved it. And I still can't remember most of it now. um, I liked hockey.
Sports. Mm,
Oh yeah, I liked sports. I was a
yeah.
pretty sickly child though, so and I was still not quite there yet at 12. But
Okay.
I did love sports and continued to like sports after going forward.
What did you find sport gave you?
Outlet, release from stress, tension, because I mean, you actually had stress. Well, I had stress back then because of what happened when I was 12. We're
Yeah.
talking from that age. So, for example, after my father left for some 18-year-old, and she was obviously I suspect, a gold digger, you know.
Yes.
So he left for 6 months, and on that 6 months, I would go home from school, basically making coffee and mum crying all the time. Me trying to pacify her, and so yeah, school for that and after school activities like that were great for me because I knew what I would be facing when I got home, which wasn't pleasant for mum. Felt sorry for her.
Yeah, so you had like if you went and did your own thing in that sports area, which filled up more time, so you had less time at home to have
Yeah,
to do that.
and the exercise itself, just make you're doing something you enjoy, but it's also the exercise itself is very, it's good for your endorphins, makes you feel better, so you could handle things better. Yeah.
And the team environment, did that have any?
I Yeah, I wasn't a big team environment person.
Yeah,
No,
just
mostly
like this.
alone. I mean, the hockey thing and all that was yeah, it was fun, and you did your part, but it wasn't. After that, I was into lone sports.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Because if other people weren't doing their job in the sport you're doing, like they're slacking or they're not doing their job properly, I wouldn't be very happy about it because I was a bit of a perfectionist.
I love that because the theme of this whole interview today was perfectionism was at the top. So, and it's wonderful that you brought that up. I love how in tune you are. So the next ones that we're going to go on is about the family dynamics. So how, you touched on it as you're always forward thinking, which I love. How did your father's departure when you were 12 um, and his eventual return affect you and your family dynamics?
Ooh, it did quite quite big time. I think when he left, and it was very sudden, of course, I didn't get the explanation of what was going on because I'm 12. He came and said, I'm going away for a while. So I was like, what's going on? I didn't quite
Mm.
know the full story. My older brother, of course, knew the story. But I found it out later. But I think I felt very bad for mum. I think she suffered quite a lot, even in the future for that. I think what had happened is I think of the deal. I was told by my brother, the deal was if he didn't come back, he'd never see the children again kind of attitude, which was wrong because
Yeah.
he did come back. He came back in a mess. And it really never was quite the same. There's always tension in the air, it was never for them and for us being around. I think that's why probably I got going pretty quickly to work before, you know, should have. I wanted to, but I think that helped. So I spent a lot of time away from home after that. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it just was living in tension.
yeah. It's sad. They should never have gotten back together. They should have just parted ways and got themselves new lives. But I think it was that threat of not seeing the kids, which is silly because it would have anyway. It would have worked out. But for as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure I might speak for my brother. It we thought it was better off. Doing it for us was silly. They said it
Yeah.
was better off for them if they'd have just parted ways and be amicable in that way.
And the
But
thing
they
is, they
did.
never actually ask the children, do they? They don't come and say, hey, what do you guys think about that? Do you think it's better we stay or not? They just make that decision for themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that still goes on today as well, but I think there is a little bit of parting on that. They do start to involve the children a bit more, especially if they're teenagers.
Yeah.
And we learn a lot from our children, especially if we listen to them. They teach us a lot.
Yeah, and I think the difference now is that, we had a very strict upbringing. It was the 60s. I mean, things are a little different now. So there's more, and I think that's a good thing. There's more parent, children, deep, meaningful conversations that happen. I mean, when we were in the 60s, we never knew what was going to happen next. I mean, you're talking about puberty and getting old and what was going to happen to you. You didn't know, just all of a sudden something happened. You go, what's this? What's all this about? It's more of a shock to the system where the children are more prepared for things that are to come. And I think that's a very positive thing.
I love that. So, still continuing with that, what was it like for you emotionally during the times of his absence and return?
The absence, you know what? Whether it's blocked out, I can't really tell you. I think probably a numbness. I think I was more involved in trying to help mum all the time get through it.
Yeah,
Um, so I think though afterwards, when he came back, I was resentful towards him. And
okay.
actually, I was pretty well resentful to him. I mean, I was pleasant and all that, but I wouldn't really let him in. And
Yeah,
it only took till latter years after my mum died when I was 35, so she was young. I mean, I was young. That things came good and I got to understand why. And you grow up, and there's no point in holding a grudge anymore, and it only damages you if you hold resentment. And I know forgiveness is a really tough thing to do, and it is one of those things I've always had to grapple with, forgiving people.
yeah,
But I know when I do it, and I honestly do it from the heart, it releases you from all the drama. You're damaging yourself.
yeah.
That's what I found.
And so, even though you resented him, you kind of put yourself in a resentment jail.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I wasn't that keen. I guess I had, and I believe I did have, is I didn't have the greatest respect for men
Yeah,
because of that,
yeah,
which would make sense. Because it's your formative years, you just trying to go, well, gee, this is what men do, really. Don't trust them. And that does travel with you.
yeah.
Does travel with you.
Until you work through those things as well, and that's what you hold on to. And so, yeah, that's that cautiousness as well. But you also started off with cautiousness way before this kind of stuff happened as well. So
Yes, yes, exactly.
this was kind of compounding
Yes,
to that feeling as well. So, but that would be your lesson to learn. So, because our parents give us our greatest learning and they give us our greatest programming to go on with life, it's this was your thing to move through.
yes, yes, yes. And it's trusting people. I think I think in the end it's a trust issue. And it wasn't just, I'm not saying it's overall. I'm not saying men, yes, but everyone,
Cool.
everybody.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
come up and you would say, well, are they lying? Do I trust them? I need them to prove themselves first, which I don't think is a bad thing. Because I mean, if somebody proves to you, then that's fine. That's great. Okay, well then they really mean it. They're not lying. That's terrific, and we're all good to go.
And
So I think there's a good side to it.
and the proof that you're talking about, because proof is an external thing. When I'm teaching things, it's more the action. So
Yes. Well, that's
your proof is about someone's showing you an action that you believe to be trustworthy.
yes, and also telling me something is not, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'll do this for you, or whatever it is. That's fine. I want to see it done. And that's the action. If it's
Yeah.
done, then I can trust you. And that's the same with everybody, that I have, around me. I only surround myself with people that I can trust.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's the learning that you've equaled out. You know, you had this big thing and then you worked it out to be this, which brings that balance into your life, which is, you know, you moving
Yeah.
through those obstacles that get put in there. So now I'm jumping onto the frequent moves. Okay. So how did the constant moving impact your sense of stability and the formation of friendships during your teenage years?
Ooh, good question on that. The teenage years. I will say later on it was a good thing, but we'll get to that some other time. During the teenage years, no, I really didn't have any friends. Even though I could make friends easily, I was very outgoing, so I could always talk to people anywhere, and that was my gift. And I was lucky to have that. I still have it, because I can make friends easily. So wherever I went, I would just blend in, but make sure I could start talking to people. People seemed to like me, so I was okay. But a lot of friends know because during that period, 12, when I was 13, I was still at school. So I had friends from school, still had some good friends. There were some good friends there, which I lost touch with, as soon as we left because moved from Melbourne to Queensland and went to Noosa actually when it was in 1973, which is like a little back town. We had a grocery store. I mean, there was nothing there. It was, and beautiful, still beautiful, beautiful. My dad wanted to go up there. I think it was this thing after, to try and start all over again. Let's move to a different state and let's start a new life. And it was, I mean, it was great because I love the water. So I wasn't, I wasn't going to complain about that. They did say, we'll put you in boarding school. And I said, I don't want to be in boarding school at this school where I'm at because I didn't like that school. Remember, I didn't really like it. So I said, no, I'm not going, I'm coming with you. And so I did correspondence course after that for the last
Wow.
year. So I was very alone because I would be down the basement all day. And they didn't want to put me in they had a Queensland state school where they didn't think the education was going to be any good. So I did it via correspondence with Victoria, where the
Oh,
education at that point between states was one of the highest. So I did correspondence, you're writing down, and then you had to send your little envelope with everything that you did and your assignments and your little tests and everything. I just send those off and every week and get my grades. I had very good grades. I was very self-motivated and dedicated. I would be down there at 8 o'clock in the morning doing my work, come up for lunch, go back at 3:30. I was done, down to the beach in the surf. Yes. I love that part. That was cool. So very lonely. I didn't know anyone, except my parents were there. And well, pretty much after that, I didn't finish school. So I started working at the age of the beginning of 16. So no, I didn't have friends, but I was I'm not a person who could kind of amuse herself. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
it
I
does.
don't need, and I never have. I don't, funny, people, I can attract a lot of people and they all want it. And I love talking to people. I love finding out about them and their life and what they've done and what they've been through. I always find it fascinating and you can always learn something every day from someone, anyone. And that's what I enjoy. But funnily enough, I like my own, I'm quite comfortable with my own time, myself. And if it gets real lonely, I start talking to myself out loud. Like going around the house, where did I put that? Oh gosh, did I put that? Why am I in this room? But that's getting old. Okay, I'm digressing. Sorry.
No, do not be sorry. And that's why we're here, right? Because we've made a connection as well. And you know, where are you at the moment?
Yes. Where am I? Do you
Yeah,
mean? Sorry.
yeah.
Oh, meaning physically?
Like the place that you are today in the world. Where are you?
Oh, I'm in Austin, Texas.
That's what I mean. I needed you to say it.
Oh gosh,
So
yeah.
I
And
knew
it's
in
so,
Texas, but there's all
so
sorts of
hot.
different Texas. It's freezing cold here.
Oh, it's,
But and here we are, you know, we've met across the globe and we're doing that connection, which only
oh,
allows it.
gee.
And
Yeah.
And that's you connecting out. And I don't think people are necessarily definitely not alone anymore. You can reach out so much in so many different ways. But I really love that correspondence piece that you talked about. And I really know back in the 70s, I never even thought that you could even do that.
Well, no,
The
I didn't know, but yeah, and it was fine. But it's something that I don't know that a lot of kids at that, because they're kids, right, or teenagers could do at that point. Because remember, we're in a new place, so I don't have any people, friends. Like you could do correspondence from where you're at home, where you have your friends in the street, or you have your friends from some, then that's okay. But I didn't have that.
yeah.
So that was just totally different. I think that helped me. And everything we go through, there's always such a good positive, even if there's not, it sounds like it's not positive at the time. A lot of people
Yeah.
go, oh gosh, she didn't have any friends. Look at a poor woman. She must be, but no, it's actually helped me in the future.
Yeah.
So for different things. Yeah.
Because it's isolation in a way, but you learn to be active in so many different ways, academically, physically. You got to enjoy the sun. I mean, Noosa, that's also one of my home stomping grounds as well. I didn't live too far away from there, so I was born in 74, so I didn't probably get to see Noosa till I was probably 4 or 5 years old. But I do
Yeah.
remember it was
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
but an absolute beautiful place to have as well. But when you said something about the Victorian education as well, I too moved from Queensland down to Victoria when I was starting my high schooling, which was a tech college I went to. And I have to say, going to Queensland schools versus Victorian schools, it still then, and that was in 89, was head and shoulders above any education that Queensland ever offered. And so, even at that point, I made a decision that if I ever had children, they would get Victorian education. And so, from 5 or 6 years old, I moved to Queensland and moved back down to Victoria simply so my
Yeah.
kids could have that education.
Yeah, and I think, I'm sure it's completely different, but back then it was known fact, and that's the way it was. But the other thing about being not having any friends, and one thing about me, and it's always been since I can remember, really, I mean, I had friends at the school, but I always preferred people who were older because
Yeah.
I would be learning. I was like a sponge. I'd learn things from these people. They've got a bit more experience. They've done things. They're doing things, and I would learn so much from that. And I had a lot of respect for them. And my peers sometimes I found quite boring because I wasn't learning anything new.
And I know
That's true.
exactly how you feel. I had year nine, year 10, year 12 students were all my friends, and I'd hang out in the music room where there was all sorts of ages, or I'd hang out in the library, same sort of thing. So I understand that completely. I much preferred to be friends with adults than I did people my own age. So
Yeah.
it is, they know stuff. So continuing on with that, the question was, were there any other places you moved to besides Noosa in that time, or was it just Noosa or?
Well, when I was there, I was 15 and a half, and of course, Noosa was like at my age, there's nothing there except a beach. I'm thinking, well, gee, this is really forward, like because you want to start your life, you want to get out there and start doing. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do as a job. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be a travel agent. So, um, and this is where the name of the school came in handy
Ah,
because the private school. This is how I got my first job. Was back in we lived in Mount Eliza back before. I mean, we did move a lot, but Mount Eliza was that last move before we went to Queensland. After all of that. So I there was a gentleman who had a travel agency group down there, and it was in Frankston, and I heard about it through someone I knew, and well, my parents knew, and so well, I'd have to apply. It was basically a phone call because you would only ever employ the girls from my school or the boys from the private school.
wow.
And that's how I started. And so the name helped, but he was a slave driver. Oh man, it was the toughest. Was not prepared for it at all. But you know what? It was the best grounding ever. You had to
Yeah.
stick it out because I knew if I didn't stay, what was I going to do? Go back to
Mm.
school. My life. No, this is what I wanted to do, and worked really hard, and got through. It was great.
So,
Yeah.
out of all the places that you have lived, what was the one that gave you the most lasting impression, positively or negatively?
Um, Positive. I guess positively Noosa
Yeah.
was great because it was a changing time in my life, and I did the correspondence, and we'd moved to a new place and new state, and those sorts of things. Because when we did move quite often prior to that, it was within the same state, so we'd always move suburb. Every 12 months we'd move, at least
Wow.
12. Sometimes every 2 years. Because and that was also good because I've moved a lot in my life, and I've still been doing it. And it's just, and you know what I like? It's refreshing about it is you learn something new, you see a new place, and the thing is you don't get attached. It's actually a really good thing
Yeah.
because when you go to the next place, there you go, and of course the friends you make, and I've got them everywhere, and down in America all over the place. I've got them in Australia all over the place, and some other countries. So that's been really good, and it's a little different now again because with the social media and internet and everything now, people can have friends everywhere just by getting on here and, hi, how are you? My name's, what, can we talk? So it's a lot easier than it was back then.
It is. And yeah, it's opened our worlds up amazingly. And of course, you've answered my next questions, which is great. But it's one little bit in there. And that was when you did do that learning through correspondence, were there any challenges that you had to face in that? Was it challenging at all? Or was it the challenge was something to look forward to for you?
Um, I treated it just like work or going to school and you have to do your stuff. Like I said, I was very self-motivated, very dedicated. I found the work, I was a pretty good student, so I didn't find it terribly, terribly hard or
Okay.
difficult.
Yep.
So that was good. I liked some of the writing that you could do. When you're for English, you'd be writing a paper based on a certain subject. Loved doing that. Found that flowed very easily. The only thing I hated was mathematics, or they call it math here, maths over there, mathematics. Yeah, one of my favorite thing. I mean, I knew what a dollar was, and 1 + 1 = 2. That's all you need to know.
You
how
related
much you
it to.
get, how much you're getting in your pay packet, or whatever you're getting paid. But no, I wasn't into the complicated. I liked science too. Science was very fascinating to me, and astronomy, those sorts of things I love. But no, the work was good. It was a good experience for me. In fact, I think it was a very valuable experience in self-motivation. You haven't got a class, we got a teacher, you got to go to class, you got to do it yourself. And I found, sometimes I didn't want to do it. Sometimes I just want to go to the beach. But I knew when I got my work done, I'd feel better that I got it done and I could enjoy that time that I had off without worrying, oh, I haven't done it, I've got to do it, and panic.
It's like do the work, receive the reward. And
Yeah.
at the same time, because you didn't in that isolation or that correspondence, you're not having the teacher to ask the question straight away. And it's because it's like, well, there was no other way to do it. You just had to do it. So you couldn't ask the maths question of how do you do this? So you had to come up with that all on your own, unless your parents got involved.
Yeah, not they didn't really get involved much at all, actually. But I think they explained everything very, very well. And I had to just sit and work it out. And look, there'd be times if I couldn't, I'd just get the wrong answer. And I'd say, look, I didn't quite understand what you meant, or that sort of thing. And I'd write that back, and they would give you a response. And so they were very good like that. I enjoyed it actually. I actually enjoyed it better than the school that I went to, like going to school. when I think
Yeah.
about it.
You also had the freedom, even though you made your own set of rules to
Mm.
to be able to get it done and stay motivated, you had freedom
Yeah, I
to
did.
do that.
And I wasn't answering to anyone. That's right. Or they didn't have any teachers ask me something stupid. Or, you get some teachers who were really bad. I'll give you an example. And this is, I'll give you the difference. Talking about mathematics, right? I wasn't good at it. And I remember in school once that, and it wasn't the private school, but still it was at the other school, state school. There was one teacher in go math, and he would used to, oh gosh, he'd have this white coat on, he had this beard that went out here. And we'd always have his period after lunch. And he'd always be still eating his egg sandwich, and he'd have all his egg in his big wiry beard. It was insane. He couldn't help looking at it. He wanted to go, just get that stuff off. It was just gross. And his style of teaching was open your books to chapter whatever it is. And if you have any questions, come and see me.
Mm.
So the whole period would be, we'd all be lined up trying to find out what this thing is that we're supposed to be learning. So, with me, I could just sit and work it out what I needed. And if I really got stuck, I could just send them back a message. There was no calling them or anything. You couldn't call anyone. It was all completely correspondence. So if I ever had a confusion or question on something, I would write it down, but they would come back with written information based on that, with more detail and answering what your question was. But yeah, but usually the correspondence was explained very well. The paperwork that was sent to you and the assignments that were sent to you were very well detailed. So if you can read and comprehend, then you should be okay.
Because even in life, you get landed with something and they don't give you any direction or rules or guidelines, and you just have to figure it out and do
We
it.
call
And
swim. I call it sink or swim, Michelle. That's what I've done quite a lot of.
I love it.
Throwing the deep end, you don't know what you're doing, and go, well, I better sort this out faster. I'm not going to make it. Yeah.
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 So
And that's how I've done it.
and so it's gave you some really good skills in that way, because me similar as well when you talk about that, because even in the army, they gave us a weapon at the first few weeks, and they're like, here, clean it. There was no direction, there was no manual, there was no nothing, and I'd never handled a weapon in my life. So you had to learn from each other, and but you had to learn by trial and error. So that's the other thing that comes up as well. So going with coping and adaptation, so we're nearly there. How did you cope with the changes and the uncertainties that you did face as a teenager? How did you cope?
Uh, Sense of humor.
Cool. Yep.
If I got challenged or frightened, I mean, when I was 16, I start this new job. There's no training. There was no training. You're just thrown in and answering phones, and how do I write it? Back in those days, you had to write tickets, airline tickets, and things. But I made mistakes. I remember being horrified once when I made a mistake. It wasn't that bad, but you had to pull the coupons. There were flight coupons, and there was a copy for the office coupon of an airline ticket, and then you put one, and I pulled the flight coupons by accident and left the merchant copy, as they used to call it, in the ticket. And I had to drive. Well, I didn't drive. I had to get someone to drive me to the people's house to swap out the ticket. And I was like, everyone was totally horrified. But that passes. You learn. I never did that again.
Yeah.
But I think sense of humor, but it wasn't always easy. I mean, I'd come home in tears sometimes of things, and not just that. Sometimes we had to work very long hours. As I said, he was a slave driver, and you knew you had to keep at it because you committed yourself. So a lot of people never made it; they left because they couldn't handle it, and the stress I found was quite hard.
And
Stress of
that
the workload.
was that in Frankston? Did you move down
Yeah,
there? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so you
yeah.
went from Queensland down to there to do that
Well, actually, my
particular.
parents moved. Well, there's another move that happened. They went from Noosa and went back when I was 15 and a half. They went back and they lived in South Yarra. They went and moved back to South because I think Mum wanted to stay, Dad wanted Queensland. And there was always, I don't know, they moved about 3 times back and forth. We won't even go there. So I used to have to take the train from Richmond Station, which is a fair whack through down to Frankston, which is the end of the line, with back then, the end of the train line. So that's about 50 minutes, 60 minutes. And you would be going opposite see, most people worked in the city, of course.
Yeah.
So I was doing the opposite. So when I was coming home in the dark, because sometimes it'd be 8 o'clock at night, in a young age, young tender age of doing this, it'd be dark and you'd be in a train on your own, and that was frightening, and that will come from the ages 16 to 29 when we get to it.
So were there any other supports that you had, like any other friends or mentors or interests that help you, navigate through this time?
Well, I was sent to go and help when I first started in the travel to to help this who turned out to be my best friend and like my sister. Unfortunately, she's gone now, but she was. They sent me over to help her, and they said, "We're sending you. You've got to go and help her in that branch office." So off I go, and it was at the outside of a, what do you call it, shopping centre. It was part of a shopping centre, a branch. And I walked in and I said, "They've sent me over." And she did say, because she was about 25. And she said, "Oh my God, they're sending me some kid to come who knows nothing to help me out." She was just, I went, "Oh no, I got to work with this woman. Oh no, she hates me." But we ended up being the best of friends. She could see I was a good worker and I knew the computer. They sent me on a computer course quite when I was 16 as well, to work the Qantas computer. So I could do online instead of phone. With switching from phone reservations to book, being able to do it in front of the person online, confirming seats. And of course, I was a whiz at it. I picked that up really fast, and I was helping her because she was no good at it. And yeah. But I remember that terrifying moment. I thought, what am I doing? Why am I here?
But it was also your greatest support and friendship in
Yes,
there.
she did. She ended up being a very, very good support. And I can just mention something because it was still when I was 16, so I was pretty new there.
Mm.
There was a camera shop next door, and the manager used to come in and talk or get us coffee, because you'd be going upstairs to get the coffee in the shopping centre. I didn't really know who he was, he just come in and out. It was very early on while I was there. And I remember one time when he came, he knocked on the door because sometimes I get in there early and I had the key. Forget about me being underage with money and all that. That didn't bother anybody back then. And he knocked on the door and he said, "I need some brochures on Hong Kong." I'll never forget it. And we had them out the back, not displayed at the front. They're all tour brochures. So off I go around the back. He must have known that. And then he followed me around. Before I knew it, he was ripping my clothes off. Right.
Mm.
So that was probably the most bonding moment I had with my manager. Her name was Annie.
Yeah.
At that moment, because she turned up. I don't know. I fought him off. I can't remember. It was all a shock, and I was just crying, and I was half my clothes were off. I just didn't know what was going on, and I remember sitting at the desk and I'm crying. She comes in, she said, "What's wrong?" And I told her. She went next door to him. Obviously, she stormed next door and said, "You'll never have any trouble with him again." And these are back in the days where you couldn't. Things were so different then, and I was
Yes.
so young, and I didn't know, and I didn't. So she was wonderful. So after that, there was the bond.
Yeah. What a strengthening bond, because it's
Was
she's got your back, right?
absolutely, yeah, it did.
And they're the real friends that that you can fall back on because they do have your back as well. So looking back at all those years, this is on personal growth. We've got 2 more questions to go. In what ways do you think these whole teenage experience influenced your development as a person?
Um, oh, certainly made me. I was certainly made me stronger. Being able to take anything basically, because I had some pretty weird experiences early on. So, yeah, toughened me up. I think one thing I got was toughened early. Um, I was disciplined, which I think came naturally. I don't know, or it's because it's something I wanted to do. So I wouldn't flake like most people would, or complain about this, or they haven't got this, or they haven't got this, and I really need this to do that. I would just get it done, and I was resourceful. I'd find ways of getting something done if I didn't have all the, right tools with me in front of me. So I became very resourceful, tougher, very understanding. I was always very good with people in understanding what they wanted. I could read people, and that's one thing I came naturally. That's you're just born with that, I think, and there's something I never learned. So that helped me navigate not only the people you're working with, how to navigate through them, but also, customers, clients, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, and I could do anything, and which I did. I mean, if I wanted to a certain job, or I wanted to be a sales representative. That looks like fun. They all come in. I'm doing that. I did it. Once I'd served, I called served my time and got my experience.
Yeah.
Then I was good. I had something on my resume. This is what she's done, and then go from there. It was great.
And it also sounds like, that change was a positive, that you adapted really well. And if there was a challenge, it didn't matter. You got through it. You got those
Yeah.
resources and you went with it. So can you identify any lessons learned during this time that have been valuable in your adult life?
Yes, it's the same thing. I think self-discipline, I apply to everything that I do, because you want to get something, if you want something or you want to get it done, you're not going to be able to rely on anyone else except yourself. Get it, you've got to do it. You've got to put in the work to get what you want. I mean, some things don't, a lot of people expect things to come to them, but it's nothing going to come to you unless you're going to do something about it. And I never understand why, I never understood people that just sat there hoping, oh, I hope I get this, or I hope this happens for me, or I would, or the effort that they put in is not going to get the rewards that they're looking for. Effort equals amount of effort put in equals the amount of reward that you get. It's very logical. I see things like that very logically. So that getting to understand people, getting to understand people who lie, and actions, and also I have good memory for people that tell you one thing and then it's 6 months later they say something else, or it's a month later, and I go, okay, so you're really not telling the truth there. And I keep that in the little record up there, especially if I had to deal with work peers at work, or otherwise with customers. That way you
It
know
is,
where you stood.
it's an interesting gift because that also allows you to have boundaries
Yes,
with
absolutely.
those people,
Boundaries.
because it's like, oh, I know how far I can go with this person because they're only telling me this much. And I find the same thing as well. Sorry, my
Yeah.
power's gone off.
No, oh no, that
I've got
weather.
my computer on. Oh, there it goes. It's not charging.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, I don't want to run out of battery for the last questions. But this also shows, live things. So when you talked about work, a lot of people look at work and effort as two different things. And I'm glad you said effort, because it is about how much effort, and you can look at it as work, or you can just look at it as, action taking to get you the result that you're wanting. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. So these are the last question, which is about reflection. And my computer's not charging. So looking back, is there anything, looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently during your teenage years?
No,
I love it.
not
And
at
you say
all.
that with such strength, happiness. You can see it in your face, like it's you're lit up from having lived all that learning.
Absolutely. Oh, love it. Would never change. I would never change anything
No,
I've done. It's
you
because,
always.
as you said, I've been through you go through some things that are tough. A lot of them are all lazy. A lot of them are very hard. But it's just this wonderful learning. And then, you know what the beautiful part is? The older you get, I mean, I'm not exactly really young anymore, but the older you get, the more you accumulate of this. Every experience, no experience is ever the same. And if anybody says they've done everything, they're lying, because there's always more learning. I never stop learning. I think that's the one thing. Never stop learning. Once you stop
Love it.
learning, you might as well forget about it. And blame
Life's
me.
done, right? Yeah.
Yeah, been there, done that. Yeah.
It's like, I'm done. I've done all the learning. I totally agree with you too. But I think that also comes from a lot of people who are self-motivated. They're always wanting to learn more, to know more, before time's up. And we never know when that is. So it's like living that full life 100% of the time. So the very last question is, how has your understanding of these experiences evolved as you've grown older?
Standing up. Probably more as I'm older, a little bit more forgiving of myself. Yeah, forgiving of myself, not so hard on myself anymore, not having these expectations of myself that I used to have. Used to be very perfectionist. I mean, I still am to a point. I mean, it's really hard to change yourself completely, but I'm yeah, more forgiving of myself. I'm more forgiving of others that don't do what you had expected. I think my expectation of others, I don't have anymore, right?
I love
Don't
it.
have an expectation of any others because they're going to do what they want to do. And
Yep.
that way, if you don't have a high expectation, or you think, oh, they were supposed to do, it has nothing to do with you.
No, because you can't change the outcome of somebody else's. They're going to do whatever they want to do. That is wonderful wisdom to actually finish on. Now, have you
Thank
got
you.
anything else to add from this time that
And the
you wanted to share?
teenage is, no, I liked it. Some of it I didn't like, but the overall experience, great. I guess it's quite different from most people's teenage. They go to school, they graduate, they get their high school certificate or whatever you want to call it. Just to add to that note, I did get my high school certificate, but it was I got it when I was 43. And I'll tell you the reason for that. You'll love the reason for it next time when we get to
Okay.
the age group.
You know what? I love that suspense. I'll make sure I'll write that in the, what age was it? 43. I'll make sure I'll write it
43.
in that section
Yeah,
to remind myself to ask that question.
I'll do
But
that
what
too
I
because I
wanted
need to.
what I wanted to do, Vicki, is sign off and say, until next time, we'll get you to stay on afterwards, but I'm going to stop recording these Vicki files. We've got our next interview, and that is, the more on the workforce and that traveling and everything between 16 and 29. So we look forward to that with you. And I thank you very much
Fantastic.
for your time with me today.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. It's always a pleasure. Love it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.